So you tortured yourself this weekend working on painting your living or your kitchen.
Painting the 1990s kitchen.
The 90s?
Well,
80s?
It's a 1926 kitchen, but was last remodeled in the 90s.
You can tell by the honey color.
The honey oak cabinets and the heavy metal bouncer at the door.
There's a flashback for you.
Yeah. Someone's banging on something out there.
Oh, well.
I bet he'll put his Vans in the dryer right now.
Thump, thump,
exactly.
Thump, thump, thump.
How much do you want to bet? Seriously, let's make a monetary bet right now.
Well, all I've got is like $1.50 in my pocket.
Let's bet.
I blew all my money on yard torches and car repair.
Yeah, it's been an exciting week.
It's fun burning weeds, though. I feel like I don't know. I'm sure I'm making the neighbors nervous.
You know, whenever I think about you torching your weeds in the front yard, I picture you in a Ghostbusters costume.
I should. I need overalls. You need
like one of those zip up
Well, you know how you can actually buy the like you put a backpack kit on that has like a giant propane tank on it.
Really?
Yeah, you can actually buy them that way.
Wow.
But that's the $200 version. I bought the Home Depot, $50 version where it's here's the thing, go get your own tank, punk.
So basically you just need to alter some old backpack.
Yeah. Or a shit ton of duct tape.
But we do need to get you coveralls to look like a Ghostbuster guy.
Would have helped when I was working on the car too.
You don't have coveralls?
No, I don't have coveralls.
Wow.
Should I get coveralls?
Yes.
People are going to see me out in public.
Well, then maybe those crazy neighbors will leave you alone.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, that's the whole point of it's not just about killing the weeds. It's about being that weirdo on the corner house that...
You need to look weirder, though, because they're approaching you a lot.
I know you're right.
I know that you're not in agreement with this, but I'm telling you, if you start doing yard work in your underwear, people will leave you alone.
Okay. I am going to keep that in mind, but I also don't want to get a talking to from the cops.
Talking to?
Yeah, talking
they're not
to.
Gonna talk to you. You're covered
they're
up.
going to try and convict me of some crime that never happened or something.
Well, it's not like you're going to be out there in a thong, unless that's the underwear you wear.
I don't need something riding up my butt cheeks.
Just wear your regular underwear and then like some kind of crazy hat.
You're imagining whitey-tighties.
Socks and sandals, and people will leave you alone.
I'm kind of pale white. I do not need sunburns in places no one should get them.
On your butt.
See, and that would happen. You have to kneel over to pull weeds, and then your ass cheeks are going to get red. Oh my
God, you're right. I check my mail in my underwear, but I probably shouldn't.
You really shouldn't do it. All right. Well, welcome to Bloody Shed Lounge. Today we are going to talk about fake crimes.
Fake crimes?
Yeah, hoaxes, things that people thought was an issue, but...
Or a good idea.
Oh, or a good idea?
Or just chaos, I guess.
A good, bad idea or a bad, good idea?
Yeah. Well, we'll just start.
Winging it.
Winging it.
Faking it. Do. So you ready for a stat?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, did you know there's a National Registry of Exonerations?
No.
Isn't that a weird thing to make a database for?
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that start with Bill Clinton?
That I don't know, but they've been tracking since 1989.
Wow.
So between 1989 and 2018, nearly a third of exonerations were for no crime convictions in the U.S. So that's just the cases that they found and fixed, right? So I checked, and now we're in 2020, and there's over 2,500 people who have been exonerated. That's about 80 people a year. It's actually increased. But it's and crazily enough, one of the common causes is like outright fabrication by the police. Sorry, anyone out there that's police or friends with a policeman. I'm just reading the stats here. It's false evidence, broad scope arrests, calling something a crime when it isn't,
That shit pisses me off.
Yeah. So, I mean, like just so people don't think I'm making this shit up, an example of this is in Touhy, Texas. Tom Coleman, back in 2005, was convicted. He was an undercover officer, and he completely fabricated drug charges against 46 people, 37 of which got convicted for a whole cloth invented drug crime.
Why was he doing that? Just to put some
career advancement.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got in 2000. He was awarded Lawman of the Year. Yeah.
What a jerk.
Totally. But I've got a mob story.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So have you ever heard of Roger Touhy?
No.
1898 to 1959. So speaking of, there's lots of actual crime in here, so bear with me on this, but this leads to a crazy fake crime involving Al Capone's mob.
Oh, I love these old mob stories.
Oh, yeah? Okay. So Roger Touhy, he grew up in Chicago, poor Irish neighborhood, and all his dad was just a beat cop, just a very honest beat cop, but all of his older brothers were little hellions. And his dad tried to get him out of it, moved him out of the heart of the city and gave him a little bit of a different life, but didn't take. He wandered around the nation, came back after making a little money off of, I don't remember what it was, oil speculation in Colorado or something like that. And next thing you know, during Prohibition, because, well, everyone was making money in the Prohibition, he and his brothers, they started making and selling beer. And that was their theory, that it was much more tolerated than hard liquor. All the, the mobs and stuff, they were doing the hard liquor.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know what? Beer's a little more acceptable. They did a little bit of like a little illegal gambling houses and stuff, but they kept a really low profile because, and actually stayed in Des Plaines, Illinois was their base. At the time it was a little town. Now it's just a suburb of Chicago. But their whole point was to work the rural areas, like northwest Cook County and beyond that. They hired former cops to do a lot of the work, drive some of the vehicles, and they were doing pretty good. But why rural? Because there's this thing called the Chicago Outfit, Al Capone's mob.
So they were trying to avoid them.
They didn't want to cause any issue. There were already connections with them because they'd kind of gone into business taking over some of the beer supply from someone who had been working with Al Capone, who he had just taken over in 25, just a few years before shit hits the fan. And shit hits the fan because Capone, of course, got greedy, and he tried to force a partnership on them. Touhy refused. So Capone got pushy, and they ended up in this under-the-radar tiff, murder here, murder there. Nothing like what was it called? The St. Valentine's Massacre.
Oh, right,
in
yeah.
1929.
Mm-hmm.
So, in fact, the St. Valentine Massacre gets the feds involved, right? So they're looking at anything to take down Capone. So, go to about 1931, and they've got him on tax evasion. So he's in the court system fighting that. And along comes a new mayor in Chicago, a corrupt mayor named Anton Cermak, who replaced the old...
Previously corrupt mayor?
Exactly, Bill Thompson. And that was in April of 1931. And Cermak, he wanted to clean house, but not legitimately. He just wanted to take other players off the field.
Right, put his players on him.
Right. So he approaches Touhy and says, now's the time, man. I got your back. If you want to take out the mob, I got your back because you already work with cops and I got the police force. We'll help you out. Plus he had the mob had been trying to push into territory with unions and stuff. And they were using the vinegar approach, and Touhy used the honey approach. So, of course, more of them were on Touhy's side. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of people backing him, and he wasn't so sure. But his business partner that had gotten him into this, Matt Kolb, he was the one that had interactions with Capone and got him into the beer thing. Well, the mob killed Matt Kolb. So, and this was the exact same day that Capone is finally convicted of tax fraud. So it's October 1931. And they're thinking, you know what? You just killed our business partner. Now's the time. Let's strike while the iron's hot. Capone's out. They've got a new guy in power, and he doesn't seem quite so effective. Let's go for it. So backed by the new mayor, the National Teamsters, and some cops to pitch in or turn a blind eye, they went for it. All-out war on the Chicago mob.
Wow.
And guess what? They were pretty damn successful. It didn't hurt that the FBI was in there taking down members of the mob left and right.
So they were weak. It was like kind of a perfect storm because they were already weak. So it was the perfect time to hit.
Yeah, because Touhy's gang they were big for the small players, but they were small players. They were just slinging beer in a couple of gambling places. Capone wanted to push in on their territory and add prostitution to it all.
Oh, okay. Just what he needed since he died of gonorrhea.
Yeah. Well, gonorrhea and maybe a little bit of a cocaine addiction or something like that.
I think he died of gonorrhea.
I forget what it was. Or was it gonorrhea or syphilis?
Syphilis. Isn't
one
it the
of
same
those.
thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not an expert on the
I don't know.
STDs.
I know he died in like 47, I think it was. So they went for it, and the FBI is taking down members. Touhy starts killing members, breaking up gambling houses, brothels, just like slamming them left and right. Of course, they fought back. I mean, it was an all-out war going back and forth. But then Touhy's mob made a mistake. So they shot the new mob boss, Frank Nitti. So Frank Nitti, he didn't seem in their mind to be as effective a boss, but he was smart and he was making interesting plays. So let's cut him off at the head, right? Mm-hmm. So they showed up and they shot Frank Nitti, and he crawls off into another room, and they left. Mm-hmm. And that's where they made their mistake.
Okay.
Because Frank Nitti survived.
Oh, right. Wow. They usually make sure.
Right?
Yeah.
They screwed that one up.
From my limited knowledge of watching mobster movies.
Well, I don't even think you need to be a mobster to know. Make sure they're dead.
Right.
So it was time for payback, and the mob decided, let's get brazen. Let's go for the head. Let's go for the mayor, because he's the one who's really, Cernak is really the one doing all of this, right?
Wow.
He's pulling all the strings. So they did it. They killed the mayor of Chicago.
You know that term on mattress?
On mattress?
It's like an old mobster term. So like situations like this where they're at war with each other, it's this term called like on mattress or mattresses, whatever. But so basically all these guys, like during these sort of wars, they all hole up in one building, and they put mattresses all over the floor of this room where they're sleeping, and they all sleep. They take turns sleeping, and then they're like all on guard, keeping eyes out.
Why mattresses? I guess so you can't hear them walking around?
Well, I think just so they could all just like sleep in the same room. Oh. But then the term came about like on mattress or...
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm just, while you're telling me the story, I'm picturing like on mattress where they're all, where these gang guys are like holed up, and then... And it's easier, too, if they're all together. They don't have to worry about where is so-and-so and where is so-and-so, and they're all in one spot.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, now we got to introduce a whole new character into this, because here's where it gets really bizarre. They kill the mayor. Cernak is dead, and Touhy's backing goes poof. Right, because now the unions are like, I don't know. Now he doesn't have the cops to help him. Like,
right. Now they're going to start coming after us.
Yeah. This now shit's going to get extra real. Enter John Jake the Barber Factor.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a rapper name.
Right. So here's an interesting aside. John Factor. Max Factor's brother.
Oh, really?
Yes, this is Max Factor's brother. His older brother went to Hollywood and, invented all the makeup, the pancake makeup.
Started out as working as, like the makeup artist for the movies.
Right. So his brother takes an entirely different tack and becomes a con artist extraordinaire. And so in 1933, when all of this is going down, he's busy dodging extradition. And it's a lot of complication in how that kind of went down. But basically in England, he had a whole, today we call it a Ponzi scheme, right? He had basically swindled $8 million out of people for phony stocks.
That's a lot of money back then.
Oh, today it would be $117.5 million. And I sent several people into bankruptcy. It's rumored that the royal family had even invested.
I could see that.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars they'd invested and lost. So they wanted him back in England.
So he was definitely on mattress at that point.
Right. So he gets an idea of how to distract the government from extraditing him. So it's really weird. So follow this because it gets blurry because I'm not sure, like fill in the blanks yourself of how this goes down. But there's a precursor to it all. So 1933, Touhy is trying to wrap things up and close things off. He's actually wanting to retire. I'm going to move to Colorado with my family and get out of the game. Yeah, right. Okay, whatever. So 1933, William Ham Jr., who ran Ham's Beer, so the Ham's Brewery in Minnesota, he gets kidnapped. And it's by Alvin Karpus and Fred Barker, the Barker Karpus gang, just another little small-time mob in the region.
Okay.
And they're just trying to hold him for ransom to get a little money. It was actually pretty common at the time. And a couple of guys from the Chicago mob were helping negotiate the ransom. They'd also helped track down Ham's son just a few months before. He had been kidnapped too. So they had connections with the Chicago mob, right?
I'm sure, especially since given their family business.
Right, yeah, because you have to think. So this is 1933. We're still months away from them ending prohibition. So Ham's was as legal as anyone else, which is not legal at all. So Ham gets released 4 days later after, the two guys get their $100,000 ransom and all is good. He doesn't really say much. He's very calm, cool, collected, and he's one of the criminals.
He's not a snitch.
He ain't a snitch. So coincidentally, bad timing and all, Touhy and his friends, they're traveling through the area on a trip. They were chasing down a lead for a murder witness, someone who saw them killing somebody in their little war with Capone's gang.
So they're trying to find a potential snitch.
Right. Well, and they're chasing down a lead. I don't know. Maybe that lead was a lie, but whatever. So they're chasing down the lead and they're driving back. They never found the guy. He had heard something was up and hightailed it out of there. And so they're driving back, and there's some weird incident where they screw up and hit a telephone pole, and one of the people complains, and they get pulled over by the cops.
This sounds like my high school life.
Right? So they get arrested. Nothing comes of it because there's no evidence. They had nothing to do with Ham's kidnapping. They're exonerated, but they're not let go.
What are they held on?
Just delayed. The lawyer's saying, let my people go. They've been exonerated and they're stalling. And I think the reason why is because they finally get set free on December 4th, a few days after they're exonerated. They get arrested for kidnapping John Jake the Barber Factor.
Oh, wow.
Right? So, and they're saying, wait, what? Who?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So John Factor had hatched an idea and he approached the mob. He talked to Nitty, who was bitter and wanted to, you just tried to kill me, you bastards. I want to end this now. But they couldn't catch because Roger Touhy he was too clever. Every attempt they made to try assassinate him, he was ahead of the game. He must be small time, but he wasn't stupid.
Right.
So he hatched a plan with them that he would be, quote unquote, kidnapped and then taken somewhere safe to hide for a few days and then be set free and announce that Touhy had kidnapped him.
I wonder how many times that happens and actually works. You know what I mean?
It worked this time.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was genius for Factor because it takes the heat off him that, well, you can't extradite me because now we got to go through this whole court case, right?
Yeah.
And it helps the mob because they take someone off the plate and they don't even have to kill him.
Yeah.
And so...
it's like mobster politics.
Right. So here's the thing. you have to remember the time. It was 1933. Do you know what had happened 1 year before this?
No.
The Lindbergh baby was kidnapped.
That was so huge. That was a big deal.
There was a massive focus on screw all kidnappers and take them down hard.
Right.
So he was just a sitting duck, just waiting. They even had a mistrial and said, let's try it again. And like everyone was perjury after perjury. It was obvious that it was all just bullshit. But he was convicted to 99 years.
Wow, that. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think sentences weren't typically that harsh back then.
Right. Well, but at the time they were so up in arms. Mm-hmm. So they convict him. And you would think the story ends there. So he's convicted February of 1934 to his 99 years. And October 1942, he actually escapes prison. And so Hollywood, they throw together a movie, Roger Touhy, gangster. And I forget what the names are, but there's a couple of big names in this movie. But people don't know about it much because Touhy was able to win a defamation lawsuit, so they couldn't promote it for $10,000. 54, the court determines that it was a hoax, but there's some loophole with a court jurisdiction, so he stays in prison until 59. And he's released. But then he does the stupidest thing. Again, it's the mob, right? Remember, so the mob is decimated in 1930s.
Yeah.
But
supposedly.
Well, yeah. So they come back. So he gets out of prison. The first thing he decides to do, he's also writing a book about this. Right?
I never understand that. Like, why can't you just keep your mouth shut?
Keep your mouth shut. But no, he decides he's going to write a book about this and take out a $300 million lawsuit against John Factor and several other people.
And what? And this is the 1950s?
So this is 1959.
That's a lot of money.
What is the mob doing in 1959?
Starting Las Vegas?
Yeah. The mob had recovered. Vegas, baby.
Yeah.
Right? So Factor is made owner of the Stardust Casino.
Right.
And
that whole thing, the history of Las Vegas is super interesting.
Right. So it ties into this. It was sort of a thank you from the mob, but really I think it was more of he was a handy fall guy. Mm-hmm. So they let him be the face of a casino that they ran because he had done 10 years for him. He eventually got caught for something and did 10 years for the mob. But the mob didn't want this kind of attention.
No.
So the new mob bosses, Ricca, Accardo, Giancana, their solution, get rid of Touhy.
Exactly.
Right? So old man Touhy, suffering from Parkinson's, completely harmless at this point. He's gunned down by the mob in front of his sister's house.
Wow.
And there you go. And but there's an extra thing after this, which is really creepy. You don't hate me.
What?
Because this touches on JFK.
Oh, I'm not going to hate you.
You love JFK.
Well, I don't. Okay. Anyway. Okay. I mean, who doesn't really? But you know.
Right. So after the hit, the mob pushes Factor out of the casino. They needed someone who was an easy fall guy. Mm-hmm. And so he's out of the casino, and magically INS starts to set up his extradition again.
Okay.
So but this is now 1962. He's from Poland, and war-torn Poland is under communist rule. No one wants to go back there. So 1962. Attorney General Robert Kennedy changes the presidential pardons so that they could go to the White House before the Justice Department sees them. It was the other way around before.
Okay.
This way you could do it before anyone has the chance to say no. 16 days later, JFK pardons Factor, along with a few other mob members.
There was some sketchy stuff going on.
Well, Factor was one of a few business people that gave JFK $25,000 for his Bay of Pigs invasion.
Right. Yeah. He was definitely, I mean, it's well known. His mob ties.
Yeah, gave him several thousand to pay off election debts.
His dad started with the mob ties.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a crazy mob thing where a guy went to prison for, I don't know what that was, 30 years for a kidnapping that never even existed.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That is crazy. What a ding dong. So, have you ever found a finger in your food?
Oh, there's a segue I've never heard before. No, I haven't found a finger in my food.
Well, most people don't.
I found like insect fingers.
Insect fingers? You mean like an insect part? Anyway,
Yeah. Okay.
So in 2005, in March of 2005, Anna Ayala found a severed finger in her chili at a Wendy's franchise.
What?
Right. And within a month, she was convicted of fraud.
What?
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting story. It was actually, I remember when this news came out about the finger found in the chili. Right. So she was eating a cup of chili at Wendy's and found a finger. And then later the investigators discovered that although it was a finger, it didn't come from any of the Wendy's employees that worked there or it was in San Jose, California. So it didn't come from any of the employees and it didn't come from any of the factory workers that make the chili.
How did they do that? Everyone hold up your hands.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you would think someone would report it if they lost a finger at work. It's kind of a stupid scheme, and it really is, because at some point someone's missing a finger somewhere.
Right.
So she, so she tried to sue Wendy's for this finger she found in her chili. The investigators discovered that although the finger was cooked, it wasn't cooked in chili.
Wait, what?
Right. I guess they were able to determine that it wasn't cooked for 3 hours.
It wasn't
at
finger looking good?
Right. Gross. So although it cooked, it wasn't cooked for 3 hours in a vat of chili. Super gross. So where did this finger come from?
Yeah.
Well, before we get into that,
Okay.
Anna had a sort of salty history.
Salty. Okay.
Right. She had some previous convictions of fraud, some grand larceny involving like some sort of mobile home there was a fraudulent sale of this mobile home. There was other lawsuits. She sued El Pollo Loco for her daughter had food poisoning at one point, and she was able to sue them for $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
They have later said that she never received the money, so I'm not exactly sure about that. But there was like 13 other lawsuits that she had tried to file before, trying to, get money out of these sort of schemes. And finally, this was, I guess, her big one, the finger in the chili. But so it was determined that it was fraudulent, and she was sentenced to 9 years.
Okay.
And she served 4 of those 9 years and then got out of prison and ended up back in prison because another fraudulent story about her son being shot in the foot. So her son was shot in the foot, and they concocted the story about these men breaking in, and it was like a home invasion type story, and shooting him in the foot. But the reality was that he shot himself in the foot. And because he was on probation of some sort, not allowed to have a weapon, but so they didn't want to reveal that he had shot himself in the foot. So she went back to prison again for another fraudulent story, and yeah, so and the other funny part about this to me is that Wendy's, they ended up losing what they say is about $2 million in sales based on this finger in the chili story. And to try to get customers back, they offered free Frosties.
Free Frosties.
Poor Wendy's.
But you're leaving something out.
What?
Did they ever figure out where the finger came from?
Yes. Okay. So I know, right? That is the kind of an interesting part. I guess it was the finger of her husband's coworker that he had lost it in this industrial accident. And
I'll take that finger of yours.
Right. Well, I guess he owed Anna money. So to pay off the debt, he gave her his finger.
Really?
And that's what she came up with to do with the finger.
Holy shit.
So it wasn't like he didn't chop the finger off for her, but he lost his finger, kept it, and then gave it to her as a debt repayment. And then she concocted this fraud with the finger in the chili.
And then she, pre-cooked it?
I guess she cooked it. Yeah. She cooked it, but not in chili, which was stupid. the whole thing was a really, really bad idea. But yeah, she did serve 4 years for the finger in the chili fraud.
Wow.
People are crazy.
It's crazy. You know what? Sometimes we don't even know who it is that's crazy.
We don't know?
We don't know.
Are you crazy?
I mean, I'm a little crazy. I'm a little crazy. Sometimes we can blame press and, well, I can tell you a case where we can blame UNICEF.
UNICEF?
Totally.
Are they still around?
Yeah, they're still around.
Okay.
Yeah, you see the commercials, the sad, tearful, tear-jerking commercials.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. So this is the story of the Phantom Slave Ship.
Oh my gosh.
You know that? There was a Phantom Slave Ship.
That sounds familiar, but yeah, you make it sound really creepy.
So this was April 2001, maybe. So I could see maybe remembering that.
Yeah.
So, and it was an international crisis. So the world starts hearing about the MV Etereno. It's a Nigerian ship that had left Cotonou, Benin. And it's carrying up to 250 child slaves across off of the west coast of Africa.
Wow. And
it's missing at sea. No one knows where it is. Benin police said the ship left a week before with kids from Benin, and neighboring Togo was bound for...
So were they trying to save these children? Is that like they were saving them from slavery?
No. The ship was off to sell these slaves.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And it was bound for Libreville, Gabon, where it was refused entry. They wouldn't let them in. And supposedly afterwards, the transport ministry in that town, Libreville, it had notified Benin that it suspected that the ship had child slaves on it. The ship then heads to Cameroon and docks at Douala, but they refused to let them in. So the vessel is supposedly heading back to its origins in Benin. Someone said that they had seen it off the west coast of Nigeria, and then Esther Guluma, a spokeswoman for the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, she gets involved and starts saying things that get everyone riled up, saying that port officials said the vessel wasn't responding to calls, had not tried to make contact with Benin. She's the one that said that it had been spotted, that it was a rusting mess, and the kids had no water. Maybe they were being sold by poor families to work for oil barons in Gabon. Nobody knew, right? Everyone was worried. Where were they? What are their conditions? Food, water. Hell, is the ship going to run out of fuel? We don't even know where it is.
Right.
So UNICEF, they keep getting quoted, the spokeswoman, saying that from what they knew of the boat, it wasn't even seaworthy. Who knows if it's still above the ocean level? So Benin authorities, they're begging for help. They're getting Interpol involved from England. And then Estelle says, the next stage, I think, is to try and put some pressure on the international community to try and assist in detecting the boat. So that gets the ball really rolling. Now there's nonprofits calling up George W. Bush. Please help everyone.
I'm sure. I mean, there's 200 children and yeah, that's terrifying.
Right. So everyone's at the ready, right? This boat's supposedly going to show up. They're Red Cross doctors, everything. They're waiting at the docks, and police are ready to make arrests. And they had an international arrest warrant issued for a businessman in Benin, Stanislas Abadtan, and a couple of other guys. They were supposedly involved because they had chartered the boat in mid-March, and everyone was just waiting to strike. And then the boat arrives. Yeah, the MV Etereno floats into the Cotonou
I picture
port.
it to look something like from Pirates of the Caribbean,
right?
Where it's like that ghost ship, you know what I mean?
That's what you imagine. Guess what they found?
Goats?
No. So the boat shows up. Aid workers rush to feed and protect the malnourished slave children. And what they found was a nice, clean ferry, good conditions, nothing wrong. There weren't hundreds of children.
Were there any children?
Yeah, there was a few with their parents. And
it wasn't
not at all. There were a few teenagers that said, yeah, you guys hiring? We're looking for jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was But everyone had doubled down on all of this that they couldn't let go. So they started claiming that the captain, well, you know what? He must have tossed the kids in the ocean overboard.
Oh, my gosh.
Right. And of course, there's all these passengers like, well, I'm sure we would have seen something, but no one was tossed overboard.
So is it just like a miscommunication?
Nobody knows who started this. All they know is that they were going off of what UNICEF said and off of what Benin authorities had claimed. And even the social welfare minister of Benin, Ramatu Babamusa, she suggested, well, there might have been a mix-up with the Terreno and another Nigerian ship spotted off of Equatorial Guinea. That might have been the one carrying the miners.
So there's a different ship out there.
Yeah, but she never gave any details about the supposed second ship. She was just trying to save face.
Wow.
Yeah. So they never found the businessman that was supposedly involved. There was nothing wrong with the ship. And it's weird when you look through all of the old news articles because they start spinning their story and they're talking about the history of slave ownership and saying that, oh, but this is okay, maybe it didn't happen, but it's a good thing because it puts a spotlight on a very real problem.
So maybe it was just kind of a PR move on some level.
I don't know, maybe, but that's called crying. That's called crying wolf. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is terrible.
Right?
Wow.
Hey.
Well, have you ever heard of Balloon Boy?
No, you've been hinting about Balloon Boy.
I'm fascinated by this story because I remember watching it live on the news. Mm-hmm. And it's actually just this year. It was 10 years ago. So in 2009, there was this guy named Richard Heaney, and he had some sort of not mid-level, but low-level celebrity status before this happened. He and his wife had been featured on 2 episodes of a show called Wife Swap. And prior to that...
Remember that show?
Yeah, it was... I kind of loved it. But prior to that, they had both had interest in theater, but never any success. And he especially was a very eccentric character, was a storm chaser and an inventor. And so after their success on Wife Swap, he had been in talks with TLC and some other channel about a potential reality series, and based on his inventions and his storm chasing. But one of his inventions was a helium balloon in the shape of a UFO.
What?
Yeah, and it was quite large, actually. I don't know the full span, but I'm thinking 30 by 30 or 40 by... It was big. It was probably the size of this room. So at one point, they have the balloon tethered in the backyard, and they're filming for some reason with their own cameras. And the helium balloon launches, like there's a mix up with the tether and it launches on its own. And they're unable to find one of their 3 children, Falcon, a 6-year-old boy. So they're running around searching for Falcon, panicking, call 911, assuming that Falcon is on the helium balloon that's now floating up, 70 feet above ground. All the National Guard gets involved. Everyone's chasing after this balloon, and they're covering this live on television. So it started out in Fort Collins, Colorado, and it went as far as I think just outside of Denver. So it went really far.
I don't know what that is.
And they had like military jets, like following the balloon, and when the balloon landed, that was actually on live television, and it made kind of a smooth landing. And there's this poor guy like running through this field, chasing after this thing. And so it lands, and instantly they're looking for Falcon, and he's not on the balloon.
Uh-oh.
But there had been some earlier reports that witnesses had seen something falling off of the balloon.
Oh, no.
So everyone was in a panic looking for 6-year-old Falcon. And in the meantime, there's all kinds of media outside Richard, the Heaney family home. Finally, they find Falcon. He's been hiding in the attic for the last 2 hours.
Why?
So he's fine. He's totally fine.
You just thought it would be funny?
So we don't know. So everything's fine. Falcon's fine, but now it's created all this chaos, all of these, military's been involved, police involvement, you know, and the whole nation was watching live on TV, worried about this child. That night, they do an interview with Wolf Blitzer on CNN. The whole family is sitting there, and Wolf asks Falcon, "Why were you hiding?" And Falcon says, "For the TV show." And Wolf says to the father, Richard, "What does he mean by that?" And Richard says, "I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know." So after that, suspicions really started with investigators, and they were a little suspicious anyway. But suspicion started, and it was determined by authorities that the whole thing had been a hoax. Hence, Balloon Boy Hoax. That's what it's called.
Okay.
And that they had set this balloon off, and with this hoax of that Falcon was inside of it. And they did receive a sentencing, but it was very light. I think the mom served some sort of a at-home weekend sentence, and the father did maybe a couple weeks or something. Kind of a slap on the wrist, yeah.
I bet you they got a monetary fine, though, for taking up.
I think they did. Yeah, you're right. I think they did. I forget the value, but yeah, they definitely did. But I was curious where are they at now? What's happening with this family?
Yeah.
The family, they're still all together. They ended up moving to Florida, and the 3 boys, they're all teenagers now. So, yeah, Falcon is now 16, and he and his brothers have a heavy metal band.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they have a heavy metal band, and one of their songs is called No Hoax.
No Hoax, right.
Yeah.
They should star in a show called Child Swap.
Childs, that's terrible. Oh my gosh.
What?
How do these things come to your brain?
I don't know. I'm a terrible human
terrible.
being. You know, have you ever thought about if I wanted to fake my own death?
How would you do it?
Well, I mean, maybe that's an option if you get into hot air balloon riding, right?
Yeah.
And you can float out over the ocean, and you just, I don't know, you knock a hole in the bottom. So, and then
I don't think hot air balloons go over the ocean.
Sure they do. They'll float. Or they, yeah.
I don't think you're allowed to take.
You have to have 2 hot air balloons, because you would take one, I would hop into yours, and then let that one float away, and they'll just find the balloon with a hole in the bottom and think I fell into the ocean.
This is a great idea.
You think so?
No.
Oh.
This is the worst idea.
You know what that's called, though?
What?
Pseudocide.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pseudocide.
It's like the side-by-side type of thing?
No, no, like a fake pseudo. So instead of suicide, it's pseudocide.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Like a way to escape marriage, debt, boredom, family, prison.
Sure. I have read stories about people that didn't know how to get out of their upcoming wedding, and they would fake their own death rather than just break up with the person.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the mob's going to put you 6 feet under. So pretend you're 6 feet under.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I got nothing there. I mean, I tried to find some stories about this, but
about fake suicides.
There's lots of them.
Oh, there's a lot.
Yeah, but it's kind of the whole thing is an interesting topic because it's complicated. Like, it's not a crime that's easy to commit.
No, and I've read. There's a lot of famous stories. I can think of one off the top of my head where this guy tried to fake his own death in Mexico. He's American, and then he tried to fake his own death in Mexico, and so he murdered this Mexican citizen, but then when they did the dental records and tried to match him up with him, so he burned the body in this car and said, tried to make people believe it was him. Well, of course, nothing matched. So clearly that's not you. Right.
Well, see, that's the problem is because, if it's for insurance fraud, right? That's a big one. Without a death certificate, insurance companies wait 7 years to pay you out. So you got no body, you got no death certificate. So you got to find yourself a body. The weird thing is you can also buy one on the black market morgue.
Really?
And, yeah.
How do you know about that?
I can't talk about that.
Oh my gosh.
You go to the Philippines and, whatever country, and you can buy a death kit.
A death kit?
You can buy fake documents, fake funeral, videos of all the fake sobbing.
I believe that because I've watched Breaking Bad.
Yeah, you just have to remember, when the video camera's on you, you better hold your breath and stop twitching. I don't think I could sit that still that long. You know, like
right.
something's going to itch and I got to scratch it and fuck up the video.
How long does the video have to be?
It just depends on the kit you bought. I don't know. And the language barrier when you're trying to negotiate. I don't know. But I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And they do, you know,
But then where do you go after that?
Well, yeah, that's the problem is so the problem with trying to commit a crime like that is we're thinking of death as the ending of life. We don't think about all of the parts to it, right? We're leaving a trail, right? An investigator thinks further. There's the body, there's its discovery, there's its examination, its disposal. Like, that's a lot of fucking paperwork.
It's a lot. There's a lot behind it. And of course, if there's any suspicions, they're going to do further, you know, investigation to make sure it is actually you. And especially if there's some sort of big life insurance payout.
Mm-hmm. Right. I did find, while I was looking, I found one little snippet, but it wasn't. It was like completely faked murder. And it was just people being incredibly stupid. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple in Sandusky, Ohio. 2017, Natalie Schlett gets into a bathtub and her boyfriend, Micah Reisner, he covers her in ketchup.
Ketchup?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be chocolate syrup, dummies.
Well, he takes photos and he sends it, you know, social media, sends it to a bunch of friends saying he killed her.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, of course, everyone freaks. And before you know it, cops come knocking. They find the couple alive, and they're saying, well, it was just a joke. And Reisner tells them that it was a ploy to get a sister to come home. They thought she had stolen money from them.
So I'm going to fake kill you, and then your sister will be so upset she'll come home.
Right. They were charged with inducing panic, which is a misdemeanor, but so.
Wow.
I don't know.
I do know, too, that I've read stories about people that have hired hitmen, but then it ends up that they're actually talking to like an undercover cop to do the hit, you know?
Yeah.
And what they'll do is that the person that they were trying to have killed will pose, like you were saying, as if they've been killed. So they'll take pictures of them as if they've been killed, and then the undercover cop will take those pictures to that person and say, here's the pictures, here's evidence that I did the hit.
Oh,
you know, and then they bust them right then and there. But
right. Is that entrapment or no? I guess it's not entrapment if you actually killed someone.
No, because they've already given them the money to do it,
right?
To do the hit. But yeah, then they stage the hit just to follow through all the way and then get their reaction of like, yeah, that's what I wanted done. You know,
crazy. So I've got one more story for you. So there's one category of fake crime that didn't dawn on me until recently, is the urban legend crime.
Oh, okay.
And believe it or not, this one is in our own backyard.
Really?
Yeah.
Right now?
No, not literally our backyard. Yeah, if you go, just past the post there's a body down there.
I don't know what's going on. I'm getting a little scared.
Oh, no. So this is, Della Gillespie. She was born in 1888. And
she could be in this backyard somewhere.
She could be in this backyard. But we'll back up a little bit because I'm intentionally backing into the lead. Ladies and gentlemen, she hates when I do this, but she knows the story. So,
okay.
So it starts with an Italian, Alessio Carrero.
Okay.
He was a serial entrepreneur, and he moved here into Arizona with dreams of making a resort. And this is back in the late 1920s. And he finished his resort in 1930. It was just kind of slapped together, built from plans that he just scratched in the dirt himself. And he used like recycled materials from
Was this Arcasante?
No, it's not Arcasante. And like he was using recycled materials before it was cool to use recycled materials. Mm-hmm. And, well, it was kind of an odd looking house, but he built it. It was on a hill. But he couldn't get any business because he was dumb enough to build it next to a cattle stockyard.
Oh, is this the cattle, the place on Washington?
Yeah, you're getting
Okay, I'm
there.
getting excited.
And it's one of the, it was stockyard and one of the largest meat packing plants in the U.S., right? So he gets screwed over by that owner, like, I don't want to buy you out. You can't do anything with us anyway. Screw you. We don't want you. You know what? I'll buy that house off you. So the meatpacking plant owner, Edward Tovrea,
I know this.
right, buys the house off of him and kicks him out of town. So Tovrea, he didn't get to enjoy it very long. He passed away like within a year, early 1932. And his wife, Della, who is 25 years younger, so she's around a little bit while longer, right? And so she inherits half ownership of the house, and she actually ran the Tovrea Packing Company for quite a few years. And she remarried William Stewart, who was a newspaper publisher up in Prescott. So she would travel up there a lot, but she stayed living in that house.
I've been to that house, not the castle one, but the regular house.
Oh, the up in Prescott? Or what?
No, the ranch house over off of Washington.
Oh, well, yeah, because there's that steakhouse that's there is part of it.
It's right by there.
Yeah. So other than trips to the mountains and whatnot, she continued to live out her years as kind of a quirky old lady, living in that house that her husband had bought her, surrounded by desert and peacocks and cacti everywhere. And
typical old Arizona lady.
Yeah. And then, of course, Mr. Stewart also passed away in 1960, and she didn't have any kids. So we're going to jump forward here. So she dies in early 1969. We're going to come back to that. So the city buys the property in 1993 with money from a 1989 bond election. And it sat quiet for 20 years without any renovation, just sitting there. And if anyone, for you out there who don't know Phoenix, don't live here, you pass by it on the freeway. At the time, all the freeways, you just kind of pass by this odd-looking building.
Super cool. It looks like it's sort of like the Southwest wedding cake style building.
It's like a wedding
sits up on a hill.
cake
It's
/
really, really
castle.
cool. And it's surrounded by saguaro cactuses. So that was sort of like part of the thing, I think, to protect it. But yeah, it's really cool.
So it sits for 20 years before any renovations actually done. At least what they could do, because the Italian who had built it wasn't up to code. So there's sections of that building that cannot be gone into. So by this point, that building is a mystery. You can't miss it. And it's sitting on 18 acres, was once 40, but, the Phoenix or somebody.
Yeah, the strip club next to it bought part of the acreage.
Right. So none of us really know the story. So we start pulling vague memories and fill in the gaps, and we build up these stories. Like so as an example, some say Capone built it. Some say it has tunnels that go all the way to the state capitol.
My uncle told me he went to a party in the basement and that it's full of tanks.
They did used to have parties in the basements. I don't know if there were tanks.
So that part's true? Yeah, I don't know. He said it was
possible.
full of like military tanks or a military tank, something like that.
I don't know if there was, but there was lots of. So she was a hoarder. After she passed away, her I forget what it was. Her son, or not her son because she didn't have kids, but it was like a nephew or somebody lived in it for a little while, tried to renovate it, did weird things with it, had parties in it.
I remember trying to go to a rave there in the 90s, really? But then the cops were already there busting it up by the time we got there.
So the funny thing about all of this, like someone was murdered there, of course, is where we're going with this, because everyone believes someone was murdered there.
Yes, I know. You say that there wasn't, but I swear there was.
Nope, no one was ever murdered there.
I don't believe you.
So
I'll never believe it.
So I'll tell you why. I can explain the confusion and the urban legend, but we've got to go back first to the last couple months of Della's life. So November 1968, a couple of guys, one of them is Nicholas Wayne Pickett, hears rumors of a safe at the Tovrea mansion. And hey, we should break in. It's a safe, right? So, and it's true. There's a bank was being remodeled when the house was being built. The Italian guy, Alessio Carrero, he was building it. He was just using stuff. So like he repurposed teller cages for kitchen cabinets, and the vault was removed and installed in the basement of the castle. So the problem is these idiots were expecting, like Fort Knox, right? But no, she was, Della was just kind of an oddball, crazy, fun old lady that all she did was store a few furs in it. She was using it as a closet. The door hadn't been closed in decades, right? So the night they came, November 14th, she had workmen working at the building, and they had left a ladder out. So listen to this really bizarre way to get into a building. Now, again, remember, it's a wedding cake, like a tiered thing, right? Mm-hmm. So they take this ladder that they see there to climb to the first tier, and they pull up the ladder, and they turn around and lean it against the second tier.
Oh, wait, what year is this again?
So this is November of 1968.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So they get up the first level with the ladder, they pull the ladder up, and they lean against the second level, and they climb up there. And then they pull the ladder up and lean against the top level and climb up there and go down in the cupola. Cupola? Yeah.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
It just seems like, couldn't you just kick in the front door? Or I don't know, something like that. No, they climb all the way up to the top of the building and go down. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Della is in the kitchen, not cooking. She was sleeping on a cot.
In the kitchen?
In the kitchen.
Aww.
I told you she was a little bit odd.
Yeah.
I mean, she did live in the basement. That's kind of where they had all their stuff, but it was kind of like hoardery.
And when you see the building, you would never imagine it has a basement.
Yeah, but it definitely has a basement. And so there's a couple of versions of what happens here. No one's really sure. One version is they came in, fired a gun, they grazed her head, just a singe. And or the other version is that she kept a gun under her pillow on the cot, right? And that she heard them upstairs, and she shoots through the ceiling, but obviously misses them. The end result is she's tied, beaten up a little. They scrounged up about $20,000, $30,000 worth of jewelry and such because there was nothing in the safe, right? Mm-hmm. I think option 2 makes more sense because there is still to this day a bullet hole in the kitchen ceiling. And that's it. Nothing. She was fine. The robbers got away. One of them was caught in California in February 1969. He was serving a sentence there for robbing a supermarket. Came back to Arizona to serve another sentence here for that. But I think what happened, so she was Christian Scientist, I guess. And I guess they refuse visits from doctors and stuff like that. So she refused to see a doctor for the burn mark on her head. And she was also refusing visits, at least for a little while, from her sister, Ima, who had been a mooch for a really long time. But eventually the sister moves in to take care of her. Really, she wasn't. She was moving in to pilfer all her belongings.
Oh, wow.
And
it's terrible.
Yeah. So one thing led to another, and she's put into a nursing home. And a couple months later, January 17th, she passes away. So she dies. She leaves half her estate to Ima and half to 3 daughters of another sister who had already died. Neither the bank or anyone that was involved believed that this transfer was even legitimate. It was about $170,000 in cash. So there was a whole lawsuit against Ima because everyone knew she was just kind of swindling. So she had to settle to pay back she had to pay back the cash to count towards her half of the estate and 6% interest on all that, blah, blah, blah. So legal disputes ensue, and that's why this ended up just lost in the system and taken over by the city. But where I think the confusion comes is from Jean Tovrea. There's another Tovrea wife. And she was murdered in her sleep in 1988.
Yeah. See, that's the story I'm familiar with.
Has nothing to do with the Tovrea Castle. She was living in Scottsdale. She was a divorcee cocktail waitress, and she had married Ed Tovrea, who again was 25 years older. These Tovrea boys, they just love marrying the younger ladies. He dies in 1983. She inherits $8 million, and cops respond to her burglar alarm and find her dead in her bedroom, shot 5 times in the head. And it's kind of an interesting, it's solved, but not.
Well, if this is the story I'm thinking of, I am I know people that knew these guys, the guys that committed the murder. And
well, they don't know who actually committed it. So James Butch Harrod was involved. He was accused of being hired to kill her by Ed Hap Tovrea, Jean's son-in-law, Ed Tovrea's son. And one of our actually better-known local writers here, Jana Bommersbach, wrote all about this crime. You can totally read up on it online. But old Butch, he's sitting on death row, but almost everyone knows that it was probably Hap and his sister who had her killed. I mean, no one can prove that, so don't sue me, anyone. But let's just say Hap is living in San Diego, free as a bird, and James Harrod is sitting on death row for a murder he might not have even committed.
Wow. There is a lot of confusion about that family.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the actual murder, but there was no murder committed in the Tovrea Castle.
Right. And I think, too, there was another story, and I don't know, because there was always, this was like pre-internet and even pre-cell phone, so there was always a lot of gossip. But the story I remember was someone that hung around in our local scene back in the day had committed a burglary that ended up being a murder, and that guy's on death row, but and it was supposed to be a member of that family. So I don't know. It's super confusing to me.
It's local lore, and you can't not be fascinated by that house when you drive by. But it's they finally got around to renovating it. And you can now take tours of the building.
I would like to do that.
Yeah, I guess.
I think I'll be really disappointed when I finally see the inside.
Yeah, you can I think you can go in the basement and the first floor. I think the second and third floor, third and fourth floor, whatever, they're too dangerous. They're not up to code, so literally no one can go up there.
Okay.
So blame that Italian guy who was just kind of building on the
fly.
Well,
and I'm sure that, you put something like that together, and it's not, you don't think about like 200 years from now.
Right. I just want a hotel.
That was really the middle of nowhere when he started building it. Yeah. And now it's in the middle of this huge city.
Yeah.
I love when they put the Christmas lights on every year.
It's awesome.
It's so pretty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really iconic.
So there you go. A few crazy crimes that weren't.
Right. And we're not going to fake our own deaths, we've decided, because your idea is terrible.
Well, okay, let's come up with another idea.
That's all right.
Oh, okay. Damn it. I still like the idea. How would you do it?
I wouldn't do it with a hot air balloon over the ocean.
No, something would go horribly wrong.
Something would.
I think the best way is not to
definitely go wrong.
You don't fake your own death, because that's just, now they're looking for something. And to faking your death is probably not illegal, but all the stuff that's tied to it is pretty illegal.
Yeah, I'm sure it's illegal.
No, you can fake your death, but think about that. Everything else that is tied to doing that is totally illegal.
Well, I mean, so if I just lay here covered in ketchup for 48 hours until someone finds me, I'm going to be in trouble for something.
Inciting panic.
Yeah. Or condiment abuse, perhaps.
Yes. No. Well, okay.
I almost said condom abuse. I needed another drink.
It's illegal to make balloon animals out of condoms.
It is?
Somewhere.
Oh, stop it. Why do I believe your stupid stories? Ah!
And this is Bloody Shed Lounge.
Bloody Shed Lounge. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram. Check out our website, bloodyshed.com. And please hit like, and please let us know how we're doing. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely. And our music, intro and outro, is H is for Horse by Phoenix Exotica.
On the album Phoenix Exotica by Moonlight Magic. We're grateful for their contribution. Check them out as well. So funny. Know. That's hilarious.
I don't
know. It's all good.
All right. On that note, I think that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. We love you.
All right. Bye.